Somewhere in a government archive right now, a file is being unsealed. Somewhere else, a pilot's cockpit footage is being declassified. We are living inside the biggest wave of official UFO disclosure in human history, and the closer we look, the stranger the picture becomes. Because the Greys you've heard about, they're not alone. They might not even be the most important ones. Tonight, we're breaking down every major non-human intelligence ever reported, what they look like, where they supposedly come from, and 2 facts near the end of this video that almost never make it into mainstream coverage.
The data indicates
Stay to
these
the
are
end
distinct
because number
species.
11 will change how you look at your own history books. Let's start with the
focus on
one
the
you already
brightest,
know.
most common
Number
report.
1. The Greys, if you close your eyes and picture an alien, this is the image your brain pulls up. Short, gray, silent. The Greys have become the default face of extraterrestrial contact, appearing in more reported encounters than any other type on this list. Witnesses across decades describe a being roughly 3 to 4 feet in height, with smooth ash-colored skin stretched over a fragile, almost skeletal frame. The head is dramatically oversized compared to the body, and dominating that head are 2 enormous black almond-shaped eyes that seem to absorb light rather than reflect it. There's barely a nose. The mouth is a thin slit, no visible ears, no hair. The arms hang long and thin, ending in 3 or 4 elongated digits. And here's the detail that shows up again and again in independent testimonies that were never supposed to connect. None of these witnesses spoke to each other, ever, yet their descriptions match down to the finger count. The modern gray phenomenon exploded into public consciousness after Betty and Barney Hill's 1961 encounter in the New Hampshire mountains. Under hypnosis, the couple described being taken aboard a craft and physically examined by beings matching this exact profile. What followed was strange. Nearly identical reports began surfacing in Brazil, in rural Japan, across Australia's outback, deep in the European countryside. Populations with zero cultural crossover were describing the same visitors. Researchers linked the Greys to one recurring theme: genetics. Encounter reports consistently mention tissue sampling, reproductive examinations, and an unsettling focus on human DNA. The theory goes that the Greys are a dying species, biologically depleted, using humanity as a genetic reservoir to save their own bloodline. Betty Hill's star map deserves a closer look, because this is where the story stops feeling like folklore and starts feeling like a case file. Under hypnosis, she sketched a pattern of stars she claimed to have seen displayed inside the craft. Years later, an amateur astronomer named Marjorie Fish spent nearly a decade cross-referencing that sketch against real stellar catalogs, and found a startling match to the Zeta Reticuli binary system, a pair of sun-like stars roughly 39 light-years from Earth. That single connection is the reason Zeta Reticulan and Gray became almost interchangeable terms in the decades of research that followed. Number 2. The reptilians before UFO culture existed. Before Roswell, before flying saucers, reptilian beings were already embedded in human storytelling. That should stop you for a second. This isn't a 20th century invention. It's a pattern that predates written history in multiple, unconnected civilizations. Ancient India described the Naga, half-serpent beings tied to hidden wisdom. Chinese dynastic traditions spoke of dragon kings who commanded rivers, storms, and the authority of heaven itself. Mesoamerican cultures carved feathered serpent gods into their temples. Different continents, different centuries, same archetype. The modern description crystallized in the late 1900s, towering humanoids 6 to 8 feet tall, dense muscular builds, scaled skin ranging from deep green to bronze, vertical slit-shaped pupils. Sharp, angular faces built for intimidation rather than communication. British author David Icke pushed this theory into the mainstream spotlight in the 1990s, claiming shape-shifting reptilian beings had quietly infiltrated the highest levels of political and financial power on Earth, hiding behind human faces, operating through bloodlines that stretch back to the Alpha Draconis star system. There are documented encounter claims, too. In 1967, Nebraska police officer Herbert Skirmer filed an official report describing a close encounter with reptilian-featured humanoids, a case still cited in UFO archives today in part, because Skirmer was a trained law enforcement observer, not a random passerby, which gave his testimony unusual weight within the research community. What keeps this theory alive, even among skeptics of UFO culture generally, is the sheer geographic spread of the serpent archetype. Sumerian carvings show serpent-associated deities tied to wisdom and the underworld. Aboriginal Australian traditions speak of the rainbow serpent, a creator being tied to the land itself. Central American temple complexes place feathered serpent gods at the very center of religious life. If this were a single culture's invention, it would be easy to dismiss. The fact that it wasn't is exactly why the theory refuses to disappear. Number 3. This one isn't a modern sighting. This is a civilization's memory, carved into clay 4,000 years before the word alien existed. In the river valleys of ancient Mesopotamia, the earliest writing systems on Earth recorded stories of powerful sky beings connected to the god Anu. Their name, Anunnaki, has been translated 2 ways. Those of royal blood, or more unsettling, those who came down from heaven to earth. They appear in the Atrahasis and the Enuma Elish, some of the oldest surviving texts on the planet. In these tablets, they're not myths. They're rulers, beings who shaped destiny, governed territory, and handed down knowledge that jump-started human civilization almost overnight. In the 1970s, researchers at Cherya Sitchin reinterpreted these texts with a radical claim. The Anunnaki weren't gods at all. They were flesh and blood visitors from a hidden planet called Nibiru, arriving roughly 450,000 years ago in search of one resource, gold, allegedly needed to repair their dying atmosphere. According to Sitchin's translation, they didn't just rule early humans. They engineered them, splicing their own genetics into early hominids to create a labor force built for mining. Names like Enki, Enlil, and Inanna, worshipped for millennia as gods, may, in this theory, have been actual individuals. Commanders. Scientists, rulers with names and politics, later mythologized into divinity by the generations that followed them. Mainstream Assyriologists reject the extraterrestrial reading entirely, and it's worth saying that plainly, the overwhelming scholarly consensus treats the Anunnaki as religious and mythological figures, not literal visitors. But even outside the Sitchin framework, one detail keeps historians up at night. Sumerian civilization didn't develop gradually. Writing, mathematics, astronomy, and organized law appear in the archaeological record in a compressed window of time, with almost no visible intermediate stage. Whatever explanation you land on, that leap remains one of the strangest unsolved puzzles in ancient history. Number 4. Not every reported visitor triggers fear. Some triggered the opposite. Nordics are described as strikingly tall, 6 to 7 feet, with athletic, symmetrical builds, pale skin, and long platinum or golden hair. Their eyes are almost always described as a piercing, unnatural blue. Witnesses frequently use the same word to describe their faces: perfect. Almost too perfect to be human. The most famous account comes from George Adamski in 1952, who claimed he met a being named Orthon in the California desert, a Nordic who reportedly warned him about the growing danger of nuclear weapons and urged humanity toward peace. What sets these encounters apart isn't the appearance, it's the emotional residue. Witnesses across dozens of unrelated cases report the exact same aftermath: a lingering sense of calm, trust, even comfort, a stark contrast to the fear reported in gray or reptilian encounters. Communication is described as telepathic, often accompanied by claims of advanced healing ability. In UFO lore, the Nordics are frequently framed as the philosophical opposite of the reptilians, protectors rather than infiltrators, working quietly to shield humanity from manipulation. One theory rarely covered in mainstream documentaries suggests the Nordics aren't extraterrestrial at all, that they're descendants of a lost, technologically advanced human civilization that survived some ancient global catastrophe and has been observing us ever since. It's a theory that borrows directly from flood myth traditions found on nearly every continent, repositioning the Nordics not as visitors from another star, but as distant, displaced relatives. Number 5. The spiritual wave of the 70s. As the New Age movement exploded in the 1970s and 80s, a new group entered the conversation, beings said to originate from the Pleiades star cluster, specifically a system called Taygeta. Physically, they're often confused with Nordics, tall, human-like, symmetrical. But the accounts diverge in tone. Where Nordic encounters feel calm and composed, Pleiadian contact stories are described as warm, almost emotionally overwhelming. centered on healing, meditation, and personal transformation rather than warnings about war. Swiss farmer Billy Meyer became the face of this movement, claiming decades of contact with two Pleiadian beings named Semjes and Ta, who allegedly shared philosophical teachings about consciousness and humanity's future. Later, author Barbara Marciniak claimed to channel entire collectives of Pleiadian intelligence. One idea born from this movement still circulates widely today: the starseed, the belief that certain human souls originated in the Pleiades and were born on Earth specifically to help guide humanity through a period of planetary awakening. Number 6. Guardians of the Dog Star. For ancient Egypt, one star mattered more than almost any other in the sky: Sirius. Its yearly reappearance marked the Nile flood and reset the entire Egyptian calendar. That kind of civilizational importance doesn't fade, and in UFO lore, it evolved into something bigger. Descriptions of Sirian beings vary more than almost any other entry on this list. Some witnesses describe tall, blue-toned humanoids with large, calm, almond eyes. Others describe something stranger entirely: amphibious, aquatic beings, echoing the Namo legends of the Dogon people in Mali, who described visitors from Sirius arriving long before telescopes existed, and somehow knowing about Sirius B, a companion star completely invisible to the naked human eye. Modern astronomy didn't confirm Sirius B until the 1800s. Sirians are frequently cast as ancient instructors, teaching mathematics, agriculture, and sacred geometry to early civilizations. Some theories connect them directly to the construction of the Great Pyramid, pointing to its uncanny alignment with specific stars. The Dogon detail is the part researchers keep coming back to. This is a tribe with no telescopes and no documented outside contact before the 20th century, yet their oral tradition described a companion star to Sirius that's completely invisible without serious optical equipment. When French anthropologists first recorded these traditions in the 1930s, modern astronomy had only just confirmed Sirius B's existence itself. That timeline gap is the entire reason this theory refuses to go away. Number 7. The Alpha Draconians, the empire behind the Reptilians. If Reptilians are the infiltrators hiding in plain sight, the Alpha Draconians are described as their rulers, a full military hierarchy operating from the Alpha Draconis system. The scale alone separates them from every entry so far. Witnesses describe massive reptilian humanoids ranging from 7 feet tall all the way up to 18 feet, depending on caste and rank. Thick armored skin in shades of deep red, dark green, or bone white. Horned skulls, claws capable of tearing through flesh, glowing eyes. Some accounts even describe wings, an image that bleeds directly into dragon mythology found across nearly every continent. Where ordinary reptilians are portrayed as quiet infiltrators blending into human institutions, Draconians are painted as commanders, an entire caste system of soldiers, priests, and political rulers governing beneath them. In the 1990s, contactee Alex Collier popularized claims of an ongoing, ancient conflict between the Draconians and more benevolent star civilizations, a war, he claimed, that has shaped human history from the shadows for millennia. There's a psychological layer to this theory that separates it from most other entries on this list. Several accounts claim the Draconians don't just rule through force, they feed on emotional discord. Fear, division, conflict, all of it, according to these theories, functions as a kind of energetic currency that strengthens their control. Whether or not you buy the premise, it's an uncomfortable enough idea that it's shown up again and again in fiction, from ancient dragon-slaying legends to modern conspiracy podcasts. Number 8. The Tall Whites, the Nevada Desert Secret. This next case comes with a name, a rank, and a paper trail, which is rare in this entire subject. Charles Hall, a former U.S. Air Force weather observer, claimed repeated encounters with a species he called the Tall Whites near Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada throughout the 1960s. He later documented the claims across a multi-volume series titled Millennial Hospitality. Hall described slender humanoids standing 6 to 9 feet tall, with pale, almost translucent skin and large, pale blue eyes. Their hair appeared nearly colorless under bright light. One of the strangest details in his account involves aging. He claimed younger Tall Whites looked physically older, while the eldest members of the species developed smoother, almost youthful skin over time. backwards from anything biology on Earth produces. Hall's most explosive claim wasn't about their appearance. It was about cooperation. He alleged the tall whites had negotiated limited technological exchange with elements of the U.S. military in return for use of restricted desert airspace. Their bones, he claimed, were so fragile that direct human contact required protective suits. What makes this case stand out from nearly everything else on this list is the setting itself. Nellis Air Force Base sits directly adjacent to one of the most restricted and heavily monitored airspaces on the planet, the same general region long associated with classified aircraft testing. Hall's claims never received official confirmation, but the location alone has kept researchers returning to his account for decades, because if any government on Earth were quietly managing contact with a non-human species, this is exactly the kind of location you'd expect them to choose. Number 9, not every entity on this list is described as physical at all. Arcturians are said to originate from Arcturus, one of the brightest stars visible from Earth in the constellation Boötes. Unlike almost every other species on this list, they're rarely tied to crashed craft or military encounters. Instead, contact stories describe interaction through meditation, energy, and altered states of consciousness. Witnesses describe tall, slender humanoids with blue or green-toned skin and enormous, calm, almond-shaped eyes, though other accounts abandon physical form entirely, describing beings made of shifting light and geometric energy patterns. According to believers, the Arcturians mastered a fusion of science and spirituality millions of years before humanity existed, and now use that mastery for one purpose: guiding human consciousness toward balance. Some describe their vessels not as ships, but as vast healing sanctuaries where souls recover between incarnations. Number 10. In dozens of abduction accounts, witnesses describe a presence that doesn't examine, it supervises. Tall, insect-like figures standing quietly at the edge of the room while smaller grays carry out procedures under their direction. Mantids are described as 6 to 8 feet tall, with thin, elongated limbs and a triangular head dominated by dark, wraparound eyes. Their bodies are often described with a glossy, exoskeleton-like sheen in deep green or brown. Many witnesses specifically recall them wearing long robes, a detail that suggests rank, status, hierarchy, not just biology. Communication is described as entirely telepathic, occasionally accompanied by sharp clicking sounds. Nearly every witness describes an overwhelming sense of raw intelligence radiating from them, alongside a strange side effect: temporary paralysis and a distorted, stretched-out perception of time. Number 11. The Blue Avians. Here's fact number 1 you probably haven't heard. Bird-headed beings connected to divine wisdom appear in ancient Egyptian imagery thousands of years before anyone used the word extraterrestrial. Long before modern contactee claims, temple walls were already depicting tall, avian humanoid figures associated with knowledge beyond human origin. In modern UFO lore, that image resurfaced through whistleblower Corey Goode, who described contact with a group calling itself the Sphere Being Alliance. Blue avians are described as 6 to 8 feet tall, covered in deep blue or indigo feathers, with large dark eyes, small beaks, and folded wings resting behind their backs. According to Goode, these beings exist partially outside normal space-time and communicate entirely through emotional and symbolic telepathy, transmitting feeling and imagery simultaneously rather than language. Their core teaching, known as the Law of One, holds that all consciousness in the universe is fundamentally connected, a philosophy centered on compassion, forgiveness, and awakening rather than technology or conquest. It's worth pausing here, because this connection between bird-headed divine figures and ancient Egypt goes deeper than most casual viewers realize. Thoth, one of the most important deities in the entire Egyptian pantheon, was depicted with the head of an ibis and credited with inventing writing, mathematics, and sacred knowledge itself. If the blue avian theory holds any weight at all, it suggests a single image. A tall, winged, bird-headed teacher may have been quietly recurring in human contact stories for over 4,000 years, long before anyone called it extraterrestrial. Number 12. The Small Grays. Here's shocking fact number 2, and it might be the strangest idea on this entire list. A significant number of researchers believe the small grays associated with the Zeta Reticuli system aren't biological beings at all. Standing only 3 to 4 feet tall, with paper-thin bodies and oversized black eyes, their movement is consistently described as robotic, coordinated, emotionless, almost synchronized, as if every individual is being operated by something else entirely. Some abduction accounts go further, describing rows of small grays stored inside chambers or containers aboard alien craft dormant until activated for a task. The theory: they may be biological drones, cloned, engineered, grown for labor rather than born. Their link to Zeta Reticuli traces back to the same 1961 Betty Hill case that shaped the entire Gray narrative: a single hypnosis session, a single star map, and a theory that's still being debated over 60 years later. Number 13. Standing 5 to 7 feet tall with hardened exoskeletons in black, deep brown, or green, insectoids are described less as individual beings and more as extensions of a single collective mind. Elongated heads, curved compound eyes, sharp mandibles, sudden, precise movements that feel mechanical rather than organic. Witnesses consistently describe communication not as a personal telepathic exchange, but as a single overwhelming signal broadcast to everyone present at once.
Be silent.
The most cited modern case dates back to 1973, the Pascagoula, Mississippi encounter, where 2 witnesses described being taken aboard a craft by robotic, insect-like beings. Reports of similar figures have surfaced steadily ever since, often working alongside grays during described medical procedures. Number 14. This next story is one of the most detailed and most disputed in the entire UFO archive: Project Serpent. According to the claims, direct diplomatic contact was established with a species called the Ebens shortly after the 1947 Roswell incident. Years later, the story goes, 12 American military personnel were secretly sent to the Eben homeworld, a planet called Serpent, where they lived for over a decade before an eventual return to Earth. The Ebens are described as roughly 5 feet tall, with tan or beige skin and large oval eyes, more proportionate than the grays, but still unmistakably non-human. Serpent itself is said to orbit a binary star system under near-constant daylight, forcing the human visitors into specially darkened shelters for survival. Eben society, according to the account, runs on total cooperation, every individual assigned a defined role from birth, resulting in a civilization with almost no crime, no poverty, and no political conflict. The most human detail in the whole story might be the friction it caused. The Ebens reportedly struggled to understand personal ambition and individuality, while the astronauts struggled to adapt to a life built entirely around the collective. Project Serpent remains one of the most heavily disputed stories in this entire field. It first surfaced anonymously online in 2005, through a source claiming insider knowledge of the mission, and it has never been officially acknowledged by any government agency. Critics point out that no verifiable evidence has ever surfaced to confirm any part of it. Believers counter that the level of internal detail, mission timelines, crew rosters, environmental hazards specific to a binary star system, goes far beyond what a typical hoax usually bothers to include. Number 15. The broken ones. Not every reported species is described as powerful, advanced, or serene. This last group is the opposite, and that's exactly why some researchers find it the most believable. Orange beings began appearing in reports throughout the 1980s and 90s, usually described alongside grays or reptilians in shared crew hierarchies. Standing around 4 feet tall, with thin frames and large dark eyes, their most distinct feature is skin tone, a rough, unhealthy-looking orange or reddish-brown. Their behavior stands apart from every other entry on this list. Witnesses describe uneven, uncertain movement, visible nervousness, reluctance to make eye contact as if operating under fear or under someone else's authority. In several reports, they're placed in the lowest tier of an observed hierarchy, performing maintenance tasks rather than leading procedures. Some researchers have proposed something darker, that the orange beings represent a genetically damaged population, possibly the result of failed hybridization experiments, a species in visible biological decline. 15 species, 15 sets of witnesses, decades apart, continents apart, with no reason to coordinate their stories, and yet the patterns keep repeating. Small gray workers following orders, tall commanding figures issuing them, beings who calm us on contact, and beings who leave us paralyzed with fear. Ancient texts describing sky gods that match modern encounter reports almost feature for feature, thousands of years before anyone had a word for extraterrestrial. Maybe that's the real disclosure happening right now. Not a single leaked document proving one species is real, but the slow realization that humanity has been describing the same handful of visitors, in the same handful of ways, across every era we've ever recorded. So here's the question we always end on. If even one of these is real, which one do you think it is? Drop your theory in the comments below. We read every single one, and some of the best cases on this channel started exactly there. If this deep dive kept you questioning what's really up there, hit like, subscribe, and stay with us, because the next file we're opening might be the one that changes everything.